the sound of the compressor. Can't even hear it from inside the car. It vibrates and shakes everything. So I'm going to take a look at those bushings and replace them, because you shouldn't feel the whole car vibrating when that compressor kicks on. So we'll see what those look like. Okay, I've removed the passenger side headlight, and here you'll find the dryer and then the compressor. Now, if you look at this, that is a problem, because the bushings are totally shot. So that's why we're getting the vibration inside the car. That's why we can hear the compressor turn on. And the solution to that is 3 of these 90389-06033. These are available on a wide variety of Toyota cars and trucks that have air suspension. Just a nice bushing here. And obviously over time they're just going to fail and collapse. So this, like my channel and all my cars that I fix, it focuses on little stuff like this that nobody else is really going to care about or know or even realize there's something wrong. So there's something wrong here, we got to fix that. So this will kind of be a 3-part video. We're going to knock out this, we're going to do the rear suspension, the air struts, and also the charcoal canister under the diff. So that'll be fun. Now there are small O-rings here. I've got 10 of them here. 90301, 04011. These O-rings are for, you can't really see it on here, but there's a, actually you can't, it's this little thing right here. Hang on, let me grab, I don't even have a light. Hold on, let me get a light and I'll kind of show you what that's for. Okay, so this is the front distribution block here. This goes to the 2 front struts. There's another one just like this in the back for the 2 rear. This has 5 of these O-rings, so 5 here, 5 in the one in back, and then there's 2 more for the dryer, but I didn't get those in time. Man, it's just terrible. So I'm gonna not touch any of these yet because my struts, I believe, are leaking down because of the struts being bad. But if you replaced all 4 of your struts, you're still getting air leak down, and so you got to know there's O-rings in each of these lines that you could be losing air out of. So just something to think about, and it's easy to get to, is just pull the headlight out. And then the dryer, so the dryer has desiccant inside, just like an AC dryer. It takes the moisture out of the air that the compressor uses. I guess these don't really have to be replaced. Cold climates, if the compressor failed or the compressor freezes, I guess that helps with that. So I guess you can replace it, but if it's never been open or exposed to air, there's really no point. It does look like you can take it apart and then just refill it with more desiccant, I guess, if you're so inclined. But again, if everything's working fine, you don't need to touch the dryer. So I'm just going to get in here, change these bushings, and then we're going to leave these alone for now. Once I get the 2 rear struts in, I can see if there's any leakage over time. If there's not, then there's no need to even touch this, and the O-rings are good. But I have them just in case. Another thing, the headlights. So on this, the 01 to 03, I was able to remove it without taking the bumper off. I think they changed that in 04 to 06. But there's like one little socket here for a mounting point, and then a mounting point here, and then one on top. But if you look, I'll show you here. So there's this top mount here, there's this mount over here, and then the socket mount is over here. There is no lower mount on these. So again, I didn't have to remove the bumper, which is kind of nice. I was kind of confused because it looked like from the parts diagram there is a lower mount, but I don't know. In case you didn't know, also, if these break off, you can buy a replacement from Toyota, and that replacement screws in right there. So they make brackets to replace these. This one too, I believe. Anywhere where there's a bracket and there's little holes like that, they'll sell the replacement brackets you can just buy instead of buying a whole new headlight. So I'll put the link, or I'll put the part numbers of those inside the video in case you have any issues with that. And this one we also have to buff and kind of seal. If you look, I've already done this side like that. That looks pretty good. This side's a little bit faded. And then I have two more over here. This one here. But again, this one's missing the brackets. Broken. Kind of broken. Broken here. So I'm probably going to sell one set and then keep another, obviously, for the car. But just rubbing compound. They make like an activator spray, I think 3M does. And they also make like a wipe-on clear coat almost, UV protectant. So I'm going to put this in driver's side. Passenger side's good. Also remember, check all your bulbs. There's a lot of bulbs here. Mine, this was out on both sides, so the running lights, this should be on. It's just a 168 or 194 bulb. Turn signal obviously in here. And then low beam, high beam. There's your low beam in there, I think, or high beam. And then the low beam and the ballast. Or this is the running light, the low beam running light here. So if this is flickering, mine was kind of flickering a little bit. I replaced it, fixed that. So enough on the headlights, enough on that. I have to remove the, well, maybe I can get in there with my hand underneath, I don't know yet. All I gotta do is unbolt these, oops, these 3 bolts here on the bottom, just 10mm bolts, and then swap them out. So I'll do that, and then next step we'll kind of get onto the rear struts, remove the rear wheel, and see how that charcoal canister is going to be while we're back there. And then before I forget, right behind the subframe you will see the rear distribution block. So you've got 5 more O-rings back here. Pretty easy to access. Just right in the middle. Again, here's 2 on each side and 1 on the bottom. And if you're still bleeding down air, you want to change these O-rings out. And then just in case you're wondering what it sounds like, okay, we are under passenger rear side. We've got the charcoal canister here. In order to get this out, we're going to have to remove this axle, 8mm Allen, just the diff side, and let it drop down. But there's 2 nuts on top, or towards the front of the car. You can kind of see one there. There's one over there, and then there's one right there. So this is just half the battle. Now there's a bunch of lines and other things on the other side, and I'm stuck on the last one. So the best thing you can do in this situation is kind of compare it to what you've got on the new part and hope that you can grab the parts on the car. That makes sense. So you'll see here we have this big vent. This just goes into the subframe. This one goes onto a line. So you can pull these two off. You're going to have to unclip the two connectors. 1, 2. This is pretty straightforward. You can see this and then undo the clamp, pull it off. And then this fitting here, you can pull the hose off of the adapter. So there's an adapter stuck on here with another nipple and then a hose. Pull that off. This one is an easy hose just to get off. And I'm stuck on this larger one. There's some type of clamp, some type of clamping device that holds the hose to this little ring. So I need to figure out how to release that with very limited space. Alright, so from the passenger side, you can just barely look above the axle, and if you see way back in there, you can see all the hoses and the connectors. So best bet is just reach your hand up there and then start pulling things off that'll come off. And like I said, I'm stuck. The light is just terrible. Let me see if I can... Let me readjust and then get a light in there. Okay. So, it's still terrible, but you can see that larger hose I'm struggling with. There's just some type of clamp I gotta release. And that's the last thing, and then it'll kind of drop down. But like I said, everything else up here, you kind of have to just feel around and do your best to detach it all, because there's really no other way of getting in here. And then you see that adapter, that red adapter. So once we get the box out, we could swap that adapter onto the new one, and then I don't know if it's a valve or just an adapter or something with a nipple, and then swap on the new one. So yeah, I don't know. It looks like there's some kind of just clasp that goes around that bigger pipe. I tried squeezing it, turning it, twisting it, and I don't know. I just have to keep on it and see how I can get that off of there. But this is the driver's side now. We're looking up in this mess. They don't give you a lot of room to work here. But yeah, I'll get that out and then remove it, hopefully. And that'll be another part of the video after this. Alright, so we got the compressor out. Here you can see the state of the old bushings, which are pretty terrible. The center spacer just came out with the bolts. One I accidentally broke, so I had to pull the whole bracket out and then tap it out. These bolts have like a large washer on the end, and that's about it. I didn't get a die. I should have got a die to thread the bolts, but I did not. So here the old one just totally blown out as expected. This one's all cracked too. New ones are perfect and spongy, rubbery, just how they should be. Over here you will see what we're working with. I had to take all this out because again I had to get the bracket out because I broke stuff. But here you can kind of see the compressor right there and the dryer and the airline. So I'm going to get this back together. Nothing more to see here. And I've been working on the back, the charcoal canister in the meantime. I'm trying to get that out. So I'll get this back in and then we'll move back to the back again. Okay, removing the rear axle. It's a 10mm Allen hex. You want to pound this on with a hammer. Make sure to jack up the hub so the axle is perfectly straight. The boot is not down. That will allow you to get your favorite impact right on the end of this and easily pop the bolts off. Otherwise, you're going to risk stripping them, and that would not be a good time. So Yes. And then once that's out, we can sneak the charcoal canister down. We're just going to tap the axle and it'll pop it loose from the spindle or whatever you want to call it going into the diff. And then yeah, I'll check back in when this is off. If there's any issues, I will update the next portion of the video. But very important to keep the axle straight so you don't damage the boot. If you put it in gear, the diff still spins, so there's no way to really use a pry bar effectively, so you really got to impact these off. Alright, so I had to take this back muffler off to get enough room to really crack the axle with the hammer and get it loose. But now that it's loose, we're going to be able to sneak that charcoal canister right out of that hole and get back on track because we're way behind on this. Just like one thing after another, but yeah. Luckily this exhaust was replaced from a rust-free climate, so everything pretty much came apart easily, twisted and pulled, and it just came off. So I'll probably put some red RTV on that joint when I put it back together, just to make sure there's no leaks, or orange or whatever, high temp. And yeah, that's it. So I'm going to pull that charcoal canister out, and the next part of the video will be kind of side by side, showing new one and the old one. Here's kind of a look of the space that it fits in above the rear diff. It's like a little pocket that it goes into, and can't really see much from this angle. All the hoses are on the other side, but just had to drop the axle down a little bit. You don't have to actually remove it from the vehicle completely. That's that. Okay, here's our old and new side by side. I had a P0440 evap code, and I mean, a lot of people have issues with these. Either they crack on the bottom, I guess, and leak, or I guess the solenoids could fail. Either way, I didn't want to pay a shop to diagnose the evap leak, and I didn't want to buy a smoke tester for 199 bucks or 100 bucks or whatever. I mean, I figure this is easy enough, it's old enough, and you know, chances are this could be bad, the thing could be leaking, but either way, it's time. It's very old. It's 21 years old, if my math is correct. Or no, it's not. It's an 01, so that'd be 23. So the new one, again, obviously it's brand new, but you know, these solenoids have stood the test of time, so whether one of these is bad, I don't know. I mean, I'm just going for the whole thing because that's what I do. So like I said, these are vents. These just vent into the subframe here. This connects, and then we got the 3 clip-ons, and we do have to move, or do we? Let me see here. So here's that red connector I was talking about. That's kind of stuck on this nipple. And then the new one, 50092. So this is 50090. So 92 could be, since this is an 01, 92 could be an 03 part number. Doesn't necessarily mean anything changed with this. It just could be the last revision of the 01 to 03 line, the Lexus LS430 line. I don't know. But I'm going to take this off, this one, and then just swap it over here. So not much else to say here really, but people have had issues with these filling up with gas or whatever, or this cracking and becoming the leak itself. I don't really care. I don't know, as long as the code goes away and everything's good, that's all I care about. But again, nobody could really say one way or another, is this code this? You know, we don't know. It could be the sensor, it could be the solenoid, it could be a cracked hose, it could be something in the engine bay, it could be a million things. But it's not very conclusive, like I said, on forums or Google or anywhere on what is the issue. So I will swap everything over, get it back in, and then yeah, the next part's going to be the axles. Not the axles, oh my gosh. The struts, the air struts. Yeah, because we got the compressor bushings done up here. And really, you probably can't see much of anything. Move the light. So this, so as you can see, it's much more firm in there. It's not moving anywhere, and it just kind of is built in to vibrate and then dampen those vibrations. So I will do a video of this powering on so we can see kind of before and after once we're all done here. But yeah, that's it. I also wanted to mention this connector, this large connector. You basically have to release, there's 2 tabs on each side. So while you pry those and release them from the ridge, you have to push the entire connector simultaneously. So lift up those pins, or those tabs with a flathead, and then I just used my hand or another object to kind of put force on the actual plug itself to release it entirely, if that makes any sense at all. But you can kind of see how it operates. Those 2 tabs, there's like a ring and then 2 tabs that just hold the entire assembly on the ridge of the port. So it's like a 2 tabs release and then push it off. So I'm going to get this back in without further ado, and that's it. Alright, moving along, we've got the right rear strut here. As you can see, the port is right here, and that aligns with where it goes up in there. You have one 19mm nut to remove the bottom of the strut. And you can see how bad these are. The other one's even worse. It's all oily, but this is pretty bad. And then way up there you'll see where the airline connects. So you'll just have to remove this nut. It's a 10mm nut for this carpet to pull it back. So right now I got to go inside and then pull the seats. And actually we can transition right over here. So the bottom, whether you have Ultra or not, there's just 2 locking tabs on each side. So all you got to do is pull up just like that. Comes straight out. Don't forget about the plug for the heater. I'm going to do the same on the other side, just off camera. So I've only got one hand here. And then there's several nuts on the bottom. You'll see 10mm nuts, I believe, that hold the top to the frame of the chassis. You have to raise these seats because you have a cover and nuts on the top holding it. And then this whole trim piece kind of pops out just like this. I had this out already, so it came out really easily. And then you'll see there's a nut back there. Barely you can see it. And then the whole top will fold forward. And then after that's done, we'll have to see how the rear deck comes up to access the nuts. I don't know if we'll have to pop this off or not, but we'll figure that out once we get there. Alright, so as expected, it was pretty easy to get in here. There's 3 14mm nuts. There's a cap with the actuator, and that you just twist and lift. And there's another 14mm nuts underneath that are torqued down that hold to the strut to the body. And there's just enough flex in this deck lid here It's split right here, and you can just lift it up. There's plenty of room to get in there with a socket and a wrench. So yeah, you only have to angle everything forward. You don't have to remove the upper portions of the seats. So I will get back down here. This is just about as easy, if not easier, than the front. So let's see here. So next I'll take my very handy PD 3D printed tool. And this I mentioned in the last video. You clamp this around the airline and then just push this into the strut, and the airline just pops out. So it's very, very handy. I think they still sell these on eBay and everywhere else. So I will release it and then loosen those top three nuts, and that's it. The strut will just drop on out of here. So really the next part of the video is going to be the new strut in, and then I'll do the other side. And then I broke a bolt on one of the, it was like a plastic air dam thing under here, like a cross member type. I'll have to grind that and drill it out and retap it. But everything's done. Charcoal canister's done. The bushings and the air compressor, and then 2 struts are all that's left. So we are almost there. And here's a nice look of both struts. See how badly rusted this one is here. Look at that. That's crazy. So again, my original is the 01 part number, and this is the 03 part number. It does look a little different. You know, this, well, actually this is just pushed up. That's not it. Typically, if you were to order this, like if you gave Lexus your VIN and you had an 01, this one would not pull up, because for some reason it's not like a newer revised part number. It's just a different part number altogether. So if you ran your VIN, you're going to come up with the 01 part numbers, but the 01 part numbers are not available anymore. So you're kind of out of luck, which is why I got the 03s. But physically, they're identical, and I'd imagine everything else is the same with them. Like I don't know if they changed some valving or stiffness or whatever from 01 to 02 to 03, but yeah, this is how we're kind of getting around the issue of the 01s not being available anymore. I wish I would have known that earlier, because then I would have ordered 03 front struts, but the 01's front struts are still available. So that's it. I'm going to get this one back in and carry on. Just want to show you how bad the driver's rear was. I mean, this thing is soaking wet. Pretty bad. And if you look at the upper control arms, they're cracking a little, but after 240,000 miles, that's not bad. That's really not bad. Could we replace them? Sure. Is it worth it? Probably not. I mean, it's just starting to crack a little. It's not like it's torn through all the way, but maybe we can do that at some point, just to make it a little bit more tidy back here. Now you'll see these sensors on each corner. This is the height sensor. So this is what raises and lowers the car based on the height of the strut that the car thinks it's at. This bottom nut here is basically the adjuster. Up and down will trick the computer, and then it'll cause it to raise or lower that corner. So once this is all done, We're going to hook up techstream and check out all the values, do some measurements, and see if we're within spec before I even touch any of these, because I know some of the arms will break, the nuts. I do have extras, but I just want to see where it's at. And same for you. You should just not mess with these until you've got everything where you want it, everything new, replaced. Then do your measurements and then see where you're at before you start touching these. Because once you touch one, it could mess up the other three and you'll never get back to where you were. So we'll cover that next. Not a big deal. Just important to have the right software, techstream like I mentioned, but we'll go over that. So we'll get this one out of here. The car really wasn't bouncing or clunking at all, which is surprising, but we'll see. We'll see how much different it drives with the new ones. Can't wait. So yeah, I'll get this one out and we'll carry on. Alright, moment of truth. You can barely hear it. Inside the car. Yeah, you can't even hear it. Okay, so when you lower the car, obviously these are not going to have air in them, so you want to make sure not to drop it all the way down. Let the compressor work and fill it up. This side too. This is kind of the only defect on the car, just some really bad body repair here. Blowing the wheel well, must have got hit somewhere. Probably not worth it to fix that, but oh well. So yeah, as you can see, it's raising up. So let it just do its thing. Get to what it thinks is normal height. Drive around a little bit, and then come back and do all the measurements. See where we're at. But man, that compressor, what a huge difference those bushings made. It's just so quiet. What's interesting is, if you'll see here, the compressor actually pulls air from inside of the bumper, which is pretty interesting. Okay, so now it'll level off. Typically it'll level this off and then lower this down in according with, you know, comparing it to the back. Sometimes we have to drive it around a little bit for this to kind of go down. But the jack is still under it, so we'll just remove that all the way. And see what we're working with here. So we've got, I'd say two finger gap in the rear right now, right rear. And about the same, 2 finger gap in the left rear. You can see our new struts in there. Very nice. I can't see much under here. What do we got for the driver's front? So these, the fronts are about 4 finger gap. These are quite large, so we'll probably have to work on this, lower this a little bit. That'll probably show up on our techstream data feed. Although it is typically normal for the front to be a little bit higher than the back, just by design, but looks pretty good. So do a test drive and update the final part of the video with the techstream readings. Okay, in the last part of the video we're going to discuss the height adjustment. So obviously it should be a normal height, not high. Bounce the vehicle up and down. Basically just want to make sure the suspension's level. Let's see here. So the difference between left and right should be less than 0.39 inches, so greater than a quarter, less than a half. If the vehicle height is not to specification, adjust it. So here it shows you the tire sizes. You have 16s versus 17s. Now the front height, my case, I want to be between 7.7 inches and 8.5 inches. And then the rear, almost 8 inches to 8.74. So I'll cut to the chase. My front left was 8.25, front right was 8, and then the rears were both 8.25. So I'm within spec. I'm good to go. I could adjust the front right for another 1/4 inch, but it's not vital. So front measuring point is from the ground to the center of the lower suspension arm bolt. Same at the rear. Again, the difference between left and right should be 0.39 or less. Difference between front and rear, so there's a front and rear balance too. You have anywhere from a 1/2 inch to 1.5 inches. So your measuring points are, here's the front. You'll just see where it mounts to the subframe, and then the rear, just find the bolt for that lower control arm. So I didn't have to do any changes. I don't mess with any rods or anything. In case you do, here is the front links. So this length here, it says, should be 2.335 inches, the distance between that and that. So this will get you close. If yours is adjusted or way off, you want to get it back to 2.335 inches. And the rear here, so here's the rear. And then again, it shows you where to adjust it. There's a little bracket on the control arm, up and down. Let's see if there's a rear. I'm not seeing anything about a rear length. I just have the front one on here. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't tell you what the rear length is supposed to be for some reason. So if you move the link 1 millimeter, the vehicle height's going to go up about almost an inch. So it's very little movement. That's another important thing. Very small changes are going to impact the height greater than you think. That's not a 1-to-1 correlation or anything. So that is pretty much it. It doesn't say anything about an order. You have to adjust them in left, right, front, back. Just kind of start with the arm or the adjustment lengths, and then you can do your actual adjustments after that. It might be easier just to find a used assembly like the sensor and the arm that has not been touched and just bolt that on your car. Because once you start adjusting things, it's really hard to get back to normal. Let's see if there's anything else in here that's important. Not really. So then I guess if you're adjusting this, it says turn bolt of the height control sensor link to adjust the length. So if you turn the bolt 1 revolution, it changes the height by 0.2 inches. It's about a 1/4 inch vehicle height. So there's 2 adjustments technically. If you make this rod longer or if you adjust it on the control arm, it's going to, you have 2 points of adjustment. So you don't want to overcomplicate this. It's pretty simple. And then we're going to go over to techstream here. And what this is going to show us is screensaver. So you'll see the front right here. I'm looking at the FR, FL, RR, RL. These are your height control sensors. So the one you can see is actually off is the front right. So we're minus 0.3 inches, and that's why we're at 8 inches instead of 8.25. So obviously this doesn't mean it's the height, the computer doesn't know the height from the ground to your control arm. This, I don't know what this is actually reading or what it's comparing to. So I guess ideally you want to be at 0. So if anything, we would have to adjust, make a slight adjustment to the right rear and then a slight adjustment to the front right to make everything within spec. But like I said, it's such a small difference, I'm probably not even going to touch it. This also shows you like the damper steps, which are the things that are mounted on top of the struts, the electronic steppers, if you will. G sensors right here, G up and down, sensor front right, front left. Yeah, there's nothing really else interesting in here. What else can we look at? Ooh, look at this. So front left wheel up, down. Oh, you got to turn the car on though. So the test will adjust the height of the front left wheel. Vehicle height status can be found on the data list. So it looks like you can raise and lower each wheel, just to make sure everything's working, I guess. And let me actually try that. I'm going to start the car and then we'll try that. Alright, well for some reason it didn't work. It won't adjust the strut up and down. Don't know why. Sometimes techstream is weird like that. Just want to check and make sure I cleared all the codes for the emissions, the charcoal canister. So I just want to see there's nothing pending, nothing on. We'll see if anything turns on the next couple hundred miles, but so far so good. And that's really it. So if you have any questions, let me know. Pretty straightforward, simple process. Rear struts, I'd say, were a little bit easier than the fronts, just because you don't have to mess with the control arm. And aside from a few broken bolts and having to tap some stuff out, the process went pretty well. So thanks for watching. See ya.